Hello, everyone. Welcome to another installment of SBIFF Film Talk. Audrey here tonight. We have the Mussel Man queued up. We have the filmmakers here, and we're so excited to talk to them. But let's start with a clip, and then we'll get this conversation going.
Here's 80 feet of water depth, and then you have a 700-foot long line. You saw these 4 surface floats, and that's what's holding up this long line that sits 20 feet below the surface. And then the ropes are hanging below that, about 10 feet. For me, it's a very creative process because you have this blank piece of ocean and you really have to think of a way, well, how am I going to do this? And so you're constantly changing the way you think and do things all the time, depending on the set of conditions that you have. Nothing has to be the way it is.
All right, everyone, welcome. Directors of The Mussel Man, Megan Schmidt, Elvis Metcalf, and Matt Mersel. Hey, guys.
Hey.
So yeah, you guys were kind of telling me as you were arriving that this is sort of a reunion for you, and you guys actually haven't all been together to talk for a while. So that's exciting. What's that kind of like, seeing the movie again and revisiting this?
Yeah, I brought up a lot of old memories, good memories too, because we spent a lot of hours together in the editing rooms towards the end. We only had about 9 weeks to complete the whole film from concept to end. So it's really good to see them again.
Yeah, it's really nice. I was going to say, I'm really happy that SBIFF is doing this and we get the personal benefit of all coming together to talk to you for it. It's really exciting.
Yeah, so we produced the film in 2014, summer of 2014, with the Blue Horizons program for UCSB. It was a summer program through the Film Institute where students pitched their own topics in the environment for short documentaries. And then, like Megan said, we were given 9 brutal truncated weeks to complete our film. But also, like she said, 9 weeks meant we got to become family extremely quickly. And though we all kind of, went our separate ways over the last few years, it's good to see everyone again.
Yay. Awesome. So take us back then, whoever wants to start with, how did you find this project? When did you first become familiar with Bernard and what he was doing?
So in this program, there were a bunch of environmental science students, a bunch of film students, and we were all put together and just basically told to make a film. And he was actually one of the speakers that came and spoke to our class, and not with the intention of becoming a subject, I think, just to share what he does as a local fisherman in Santa Barbara. And we really liked his story, and we're like, oh, you are an interesting human and what you do is really cool. And I think we kind of talked to him and went from there. And I believe it took a little bit of convincing to kind of let him, or get him to let us, show up into his life with a camera. But it started there.
Yeah, you have a lot of footage of obviously him working and him talking about mariculture and whatnot, but you also have those scenes in his home with his family. What was it like, or what was kind of your process of following him around with the camera, and how did that sort of work? How much time did you spend filming with him, and what did that look like?
A lot of time spent filming. So the filming took place over about 3 weeks. And as you saw, it's about his job and what he does, but also we just felt like so critical to him is just the kind of person he was. And we fell in love with the human being, Bernard, and we wanted to tell his story. So how we split it up was I went out on the boat most of the times. That was waking up at 5 a.m. to go farm the mussels. I'm pretty sure we all went, but I think I was the last one to survive in terms of
I got too sick.
Yeah, so I was the only one who was able to keep my stomach and legs on the boat. So I would go out there, and then most of the family stuff ended up being Elvis and Megan. And please talk about them because they are wonderful. I miss them.
Yeah, I thought it would be really important to show his family side as well, because in the end, that's what he was doing it for, was for his family. That was his main motivator. And he was a little tough to open up in the beginning, but when we had him at his home, I think having him in that setting and getting to know his kids and getting to know his wife and starting to understand this other side of him was really important. And in that way, with us hanging out with him and his family, he started to, I think, open up more and be more willing to share some of the trials and tribulations he was going through. And being with his family was great. They're so sweet. And yeah, it was really nice, especially like having dinner with them that one time where we just kind of sat back and let them do their thing. And we got some really great moments from that.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, I mean, it was like, they're such a lovely family and were really welcoming and receptive to having us like show up as students with cameras. So that was really wonderful. And I think I agree with what both of you guys said. The more time we spent with him and with his family, kind of the story started to piece itself together as far as what he does for a living and his family.
How did you guys balance the aesthetic qualities of showing, beautiful Santa Barbara and out on the water, and then of course with his family? How did you balance that and that kind of visual plan with the story? I'm totally losing how I'm trying to word this, but with the fact that the story kind of unfolds and there's this unpredictability, how did you balance that with the aesthetic? Did you go in with a vision, or did you sort of let what you saw dictate visually what you made?
I think I can maybe speak a little bit to this, but one of the reasons telling Bernard's story was so great is because, and especially watching it back now with the benefit of hindsight, we really got it was a very good representation of, at least at that time, what living in Santa Barbara really was like. The way we captured the community of that really is the way people were, just the speed of life, going out on the ocean, white overcast mornings giving way to like nice sunny afternoons, as bringing in the catch. And so as we were able to follow him throughout his day of just bringing in the catch and just things like that, it's sort of, as we followed him around the city and then to the suburbs, parts of Santa Barbara people might not think of, just the normal places where, even though it's Santa Barbara, Golden State, people living just like you and me, but we were just able to capture a lot that way. And I think we were able to just follow where it led us.
Yeah, we kind of have that benefit here in Santa Barbara for filmmakers, that the landscape here gives us a lot. That's that's a consistent thread with these local films, is we're pretty fortunate here with that. So this topic of mariculture too is so complex. I foolishly thought I could kind of get some sort of grasp of it with some Google research that I could talk to you guys about, but there's just so much to it. And so can you tell us a bit about approaching this topic? I think you did a nice thing by focusing on the man, who's your entryway into that, but you also give your viewers of this film an insight into what the different considerations are for mariculture. So what was it like trying to get all of that information and that very, very complex worlds into a short film?
Well, I think when we first began, we didn't know anything about mariculture either. And when Bernard first came to talk to us, the point came across that he was the only guy who was doing this, he was the only guy who has an open ocean farm. So it's not like traditional fish farming in a way. Kind of what he's doing is he's breaking his own boundaries with what he's doing, and no one else is really doing it, so no one really knew what was going on. And I don't even think Bernard knew either, because his original permit was being questioned, and there was all sorts of potential implications that could happen. But when it came down to it, the mussels themselves, they didn't have that much of an environmental impact. But because no one else had really been doing it, that's why there was so much red tape for him to go through.
Yeah, and I mean, it was a challenge. Like coming into this and meeting him and seeing his world was amazing, and then you start to like get down to the nitty gritty. And Bernard would explain it to us, and then like we talked to Sarah, who ran Community Seafood, and like we talked to a lot of people and did a lot of research, and it never seemed to clarify everything perfectly. But I think that our experience learning about it was also representative of his experience trying to wade through all of the permits and all of the information. So it was like, that was a really important thing, obviously, for his story and for this film, but a big learning curve.
Right.
Yeah. And I think you hit the nail on the head as far as there's not a lot of info out there. Part of the reason we told this story is just because like mariculture and aquaculture is just not something that's even really in the public consciousness in a big way, even though it probably really should be.
Right.
So the ability to, have an entry point that can actually get people to care about a topic that you may say like growing food in the ocean, don't we have bigger fish to fry? But to not to make a great pun, unfortunately, but yeah. So to start through him, I think gets everybody hooked enough to start actually taking it seriously. Again, puns. I
welcome them. I mean, if you guys have any, feel free to chime in. Oh man, so your pun threw me off. I forgot I had my next point, but wow.
I can be disarming. I understand.
Completely. Yeah. Can you back up? What were you actually talking about before that? Please help me out.
We were talking about how there just isn't a lot of understanding of.
Right. Oh, okay. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So expanding on that, I mean, this is a Blue Horizons project, like you guys said. So obviously kind of some purpose of this film is to drive forward that, that narrative of what's going on in our world with the environment and what some possible solutions are. And so it's really fascinating that you brought forward this, really unknown thing, like you said. Is that sorry, hearing noise. Okay, I'm just a mess today. Sorry, guys. Why don't you tell us a bit about the editing process, going through the footage and how you sort of solidified the final story then?
Oh, editing. We were in the editing room for so long, late into the night, early the next morning. And we had a lot of footage to go through. And I think the way that we kind of tackled editing is we split up different scenes or different stories, and we would each tackle, like Matt, for example, he took on the farmer's market scene. I did some of the at-home scenes, and my process for editing, especially in the beginning, was kind of just finding a soundtrack first, and then using that soundtrack to kind of time the way that my edits were. But we were able to keep it pretty cohesive, even though there's three people editing. All three of us would sit in front of the computer and we would all, like nitpick each other and like, no, that doesn't look good. Like, take off 2 seconds and things like that.
Yeah, it's like, it was a pretty interesting exercise in editing, especially having that, at least for me, being the first experience of like really sitting down to commit to editing a piece, not like something we can just like forget about later. Like we have to get it done. So to all kind of take ownership of different parts of this film, but then come together and argue and passionately discuss about like the most minute details, was both challenging and really, really exciting because we all just really cared, and ultimately we all wanted to make something we were proud of, which I think we achieved. But it was an exciting challenge editing this piece.
It was a labor of love for sure. A fun fact: people who watched may have noticed that we titled our fake production company Barefoot Cinemas. The joke there being that we would be in the editing room for like 16, 18 hours at a time and would like routinely almost all the time have our shoes and socks off inside the editing room. And so that's how we became Barefoot Cinemas. But Also, as far as editing and how we were able to keep it together with how we said we basically, the only way to get through everything was to just split it up and say, all right, nail your section, let's go. About time we bring up Michael and Richard, our amazing, the instructors of the program A and executive producers of our film B, who, because at the end of the day, this was, the fact that it turned out to be more than the sum of its parts, the film, is part of the reason why we're here, but it was a student project. Like, we were like, it was almost as if we were doing something for a grade, but so we were being instructed the whole time. We would wake up at 8 a.m., go have 4 hours of classes, go film, come back, and then do editing. So in courses, we would have Mike and Richard, who were amazing. And the only reason this thing comes together in 9 weeks is because they say, here's how you make a pre-production packet. Here's how you make a shot list, even though you don't know what your shots are, and it's a documentary and you're going to wing it in the first place. Here's how you figure out what you're going to get before you get it. Here's how you storyboard with index cards, move them around, make it physical. So they both, before and long after the film, they continued to support us in everything. So they deserve a lot of credit for what came out of this.
Awesome. Would you say that the project changed a lot from your initial concept of it to what it ended up being? Were there a lot of fundamental changes, or was it something that kind of fell into place for you?
Yeah, I don't think we were planning on ending on that note of Bernard talking about his children and kind of comparing it to his farm. That wasn't in our original plan, but looking back at the footage, that was one of the moments where you really saw who he was as a person and how, you know, his like family life and his business life became one. And that was really cool. So, and it also just like left a good feeling to end the film on that note.
Yeah, you know, I think that's kind of your nice central message that this film brings about how to treat the environment as well in general, that it's about listening and caring. I like how he sort of crystallized that with this comparison between what he does as a farmer with what he does as a father.
I do want to say one very great note about that is that we were not expecting that at all. That came out of absolutely nowhere. As a joke, we asked him at the end of one of the interview sessions, is there any message you want to send the world? Almost as like, just as a joke. We were like, oh, you have your platform. What do you want to say to the world? We go back to interview him the next time and he's like, you know what? I really thought about that, and here's what I have to say. And that is what ended up being the emotional gut punch at the end, I suppose.
Too, after he had finished talking, we all just looked at each other like, oh, that was it.
That's awesome. I love that. So yeah, after you guys have done this great project and are all graduated, and it's been some years since that film came out, what have you each been up to since? And then what would you say is the wisdom you gained, or what you kind of learned, and what advice would you pass on from this particular project? Whoever wants to start.
I'll go for it. I'll take the lead, I guess. So so Mussel Man actually was like very big for me coming out of college. It's not like huge. It's not like I became some kind of huge filmmaker, but it did get me like several years of work doing film in Los Angeles. Like what this brought forward for me, and for all of us, it was just proof that we could come out of film school into the working world and we had something to offer. So I personally ended up doing film for a couple years after that, basically off the back of this. And I realized my passion lies elsewhere. So I personally don't work in film anymore. I actually work in esports, competitive video gaming. So shameless plug.
Congrats.
The Overwatch League finals are tonight. But yeah, so I mean, what I like, it sounds trite, and I'm not reaching here to say that what I learned doing this, and like how hard people in entertainment, and again, not to use a platitude, like how hard you really have to grind and the hours that you have to put in. You know, you have to love your subject. You have to love the work to be able to put that much into it. And I think loving Muscle Man the way that I did, and loving working with Megan, working with Elle, working with Bernard, working with our instructors, like gave me a baseline for, if I don't love this as much as I love Muscle Man, I shouldn't be doing it. And that was, and legitimately that, like, that guiding principle has helped me. I did not enjoy the other film experiences as much as I did working on Muscle Man. And so I think I realized something important there. But anyway.
Yeah, that's great.
You, Matt. I feel like what I learned most from this experience was, this was the first project where passion really came out of me, and like also hard work, like all those long hours. I didn't know I was capable of that. And now that I know, and like now that I had that experience, I can be kind of a perfectionist when it comes to other projects. Like I use that same perfectionism and stepping back and be like, is this good enough? Or like, can I put my name on this? Can we put our name on this? That I've kind of taken with me as I've gone. And I'm not in film either anymore. I've actually started doing pottery and ceramic art.
Oh,
Yes, pursuing that. And we'll be pursuing a grad program for that too. So more textile art form, but yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, I will piggyback off of both of what you said. Like the learning experience was massively important. That going into the Blue Horizons program and leaving UCSB, I studied film and media studies, and the majority of that was not practical hands-on filmmaking. A lot of history and theory and analysis, but this was the first time that like we got to use our hands and our brains and learn all these things and make something tangible. And that really steered what I then chose to pursue out of school. It like truly flipped the switch and was like, oh, I enjoy this. And like, this feels good to put my time and effort into. So it was a big deal to do this film with Matt and Megan. And I now work in digital production, still in the production world, keeping it going.
That's awesome. Congrats. You know what? At the film festival, we get a lot of filmmakers coming through here each year, and everyone is completely different with their paths with film. And I've talked to people that this is their first film ever, and their career is in something completely different. And there's folks that have only ever done film, and I would say the majority is probably people that take their breaks from it and come back. That's a totally normal experience, I think, with filmmakers. And I think that speaks to what's really awesome about filmmaking, is that it's sort of this nebulous art form where there's so many different access points to it that I think anyone, given the passion and the right situation, can get into this and really offer something. So those are my thoughts about what you guys just said. And like, yeah. Thank you guys so much for joining us. And any final words, anything to say to each other since you're all here?
No, I'm just so happy to see
My emotion.
you guys.
My emotion. I mean, yeah, it's been a long time, and it made me think of a simpler, happier time. And I miss you guys, and I hope that we as a people can continue to try and better ourselves, like Bernard. Just because this is something we made 6 years ago doesn't mean the lessons changed. Especially now, today, let's be kind to each other, and let's try and be better instead of trying to not be awful.
I support that.
Yeah. Well said. Well, thank you. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Elvis. Thank you, Megan, so much for being here, and join us again next week for our next installment of Film Talk.
Great. Thanks, Audrey.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thanks for having us.
Bye.
Bye.